When will they kiss already?
They are not gonna kiss you, Lynn.
What?
Yeah, they don't kiss on the show.
Are you telling me that I wasted 33 episodes of my life and they're not kissing like even once?
I'm sorry.
Today we're going to talk about why it's so hard to publish LGBTQ content in China and how artists find creative solutions to avoid censorship. In our class on LGBTQ in East Asia, we talked about Chinese soft power and how media may use tokenism to project a progressive image to international audiences. And scholars agree that queer content is allowed to exist in China as long as it's commercially successful or politically beneficial, which means censorship of queer content is often purposefully ambiguous. And although there has been some progress for LGBTQ rights in China, some scholars argue that increasing media restrictions under Xi Jinping are making life harder for queer people overall. But to understand the censorship of queer media, let me try to explain how censorship in China works on a structural level. Nowadays, upper-level institutions like the Ministry of Culture or the NTRA will write basic framework regulations, which are then executed by localized government institutions who coordinate an elaborate process of both manually operated and automated censorship. This happens in the form of pre-production approval and post-production censorship. Because of the internet, censorship systems had to switch from a top-down approach to a localized responsibility system. This means that not just the general administrations, but the head of each newspaper, website, game studio, and so on, feels personally responsible for the implementation of regulations. This diffusion of state censorship responsibilities is also aided by the structure of corporate governance in China. Because growing companies are required to establish local party committees, and big companies often become partly state-owned enterprises, which means companies themselves will directly be responsible for moderating their own communities. And the most important mechanism that diffuses the censorship in China is the Illegal and Unsavory Information Report Center, where internet users can report content themselves. The ambiguous language of government regulations and the panoptic structure of the censorship systems mean that users will often feel compelled to either self-censor or censor their peers. This means that often fans of queer media will report content that they either disagree with or that they fear might harm their idols. And the deliberate framing of queer content as pornographic can aid in creating a sort of moral panic that makes the censorship of such content more socially acceptable.
Now, let's see the impact of those regulations and how creators have found a way to circumvent them to continue creating queer stories. Let me show you an example of post-production censorship. MiHoYo is a Chinese video game company that is popular globally for games such as the Honkai series or Genshin Impact, among others. These are some scenes from an official manhwa of their game, Honkai Impact 3rd. In 2021, and coinciding with China's ban on effeminate men, this scene was deleted, and the story was changed. However, this did not stop the company from making queer content in their own way through what is called queercoding. Coding is defined by Ragnar Lancer as a set of signals, words, forms, behaviors, signifiers of some kind that protect the creator from the consequences of openly expressing particular messages. Coding occurs in the context of complex audiences, in which some members may be competent and willing to decode the message, but others are not. This way, creators get to make queer content without making it explicit, and in a way that is not understandable or perceptible to everyone. Let me show you the example of Genshin Impact's character Wanderer. He's born as a mechanical puppet built and then abandoned by a god named A, and many suspect he might have been inspired by a woman, Makoto, A's twin. When he's first abandoned by the god, he's seen wearing a long veil, akatsuki, which has been traditionally worn by women in Japan, starting in the Heian period. Later, he begins to work for a military organization called the Fatui, and his design changes. Now, he's seen wearing a veiled hat very similar to the ichimegaza, which was commonly worn by noble women in Japan. Lastly, there's a big change in his character story. He deletes his previous identities from everyone's memories, and he obtains the power of the wind, heavily related to freedom in the game. Now, he's free and finally choosing who he wants to be. With this change, he gets a new design, in which he is no longer wearing women's clothing, and players are also given the option to give the Wanderer a new name. His story is widely interpreted and accepted among fans of the game as an allegory for transgender identity. Moving on from Genshin Impact, we have famous Tanmei, the Untamed, which is based on a novel called 魔道祖师. There is heavy reference to traditional wedding rituals in the Tanmei, such as 狼忘之 getting drunk, stealing two roosters, and gifting them to Wei Wuxian. In different regions of China, chicken is used in traditional wedding practices, such as a present to the bride-to-be, among others. In another scene, 狼忘之 and Wei Wuxian are seen bowing 3 times in front of an altar in Wei Wuxian's childhood home. In traditional Chinese weddings, couples perform 3 bows, the first to heaven and earth, the second to their parents, and the third to each other. These are just some examples of queer coding in Chinese media, but there are many more that you can also notice by consuming content critically and engaging with fandom analysis. And sadly, there are many people who invalidate queer coding, saying that it's not real if it's not explicit. But we have to be open-minded and remember that every country has a different reality, and the creators in those countries will also find their own way to make queer content. And just because it's not what you're used to seeing, it doesn't mean that it's not real. So we encourage you to exercise media literacy and critical thinking, and we assure you that you'll see way more than what is right in front of your eyes. Thank you for watching!